protest in 2020. We're 4 years now since that incident took place. And how can we sensitize people on the dangers of scooping petrol, especially during or when there are tanker accidents? And then, Lagos, Nigeria, what do you make of the incessant collapse of the national grid last week? We had one, we had two, we had three. Like, what is happening in 1 week? My name is Emmanuel Onka, and that is how I welcome you today to the Newsroom, a production brought to you by the Newsroom of Nigeria Info, Cool FM, Wasobia FM, Arawa Radio, and of course, Kids FM as well. We're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube at Nigeria Info 95.3 on Facebook and Nigeria Info FM on YouTube. First of all, we're going to be looking at some of the stories that made the headlines last week. I'm looking at my producer sent me here, or rather my producer put in here, and I'm thinking one of them is missing that I will call in later. But first of all, I have to tell you that our news manager for the Newsroom of Lagos, Ufuoma Egbamuno, is joining me live, joining me from his vacation spot. Okay, joining me from his vacation spot, Ufuoma Egbamuno. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Emmanuel, can you stop misinforming Lagos and beyond? I'm not on vacation.
Oh, okay.
The last time I checked, I still produced the news this morning from 6 a.m. till 12 p.m.
Location, please.
And I've been awake. Since 4 a.m. That's not, if I was on vacation, I would not be working. I would just be chilling with Ufuoma and Colette, my kids.
Well, anybody who is a journalist always knows that the work never ends. Vacation or not, you always work. But that's why you wayside.
Yeah, I'm just working remotely. That's just the difference. I'm not in Lagos. I'm working remotely, but I'm not on. But I'm going to take my vacation when I come back next week. Take a week's break. Yes.
Well, we'll settle that off camera.
You're not settling nothing. I make decisions.
All right. Well, it's good that you're there in Port Harcourt because, here in Lagos, we had, I wouldn't say it was a scare, but people were concerned, especially when activists actually said last week, or came out with a statement last week, that they were going to be holding a procession at the Lekki toll gate, on Sunday to mark the 4th anniversary of the NSAS protest. Now, if you were as long as you're in Nigeria or you've been in Nigeria, of course, you've heard about the NSAS protest. It was when youths all over the country came out in protest of police brutality. And since that time, it has sort of like haunted literally everybody when recall everything that happened, especially on the 20th of October 2020, where youths were shot at while they were protesting at the Lekki toll gate. Since then, the Lekki toll gate has been some form of a monument, so to speak, to all of the activists, all of the protesters in Nigeria. They always like to go there to like pay homage to people who lost their lives, people who were injured, and people who suffered so many casualties, from that very incident that day. Looking back to Sunday, I was at the protest ground. Of course, I have to put myself there. But then, Ufuoma, what do you make of the whole incident that happened on Sunday?
Very honest, I thought it was supposed to be the other way around, me asking you what happened on Sunday.
You didn't say anything now.
Let me just give a little bit of let me just talk about it in a little way. I think that the reasons that we had that protest back in 2020 are still living with us. One of the major issues young people in Nigeria had, is police brutality, the way police, unfortunately, tackle issues, the way they go about issues in sometimes or most times not civil manners. That's the reason they had that protest. 4 years after, you might even argue that even with the disbandment of SARS, that, the issues are still there, unfortunately. Listening to the comments of the new Lagos State Police Command Police Commissioner, I couldn't for the life of me, understand what he meant by that, the people who planned the procession did not take permission from the police, and so they are not going to allow. See, it's one thing to cause mayhem. It's one thing, and of course, nobody wants mayhem in Lagos anymore. Nobody wants that kind of civil disturbance that we had 4 years ago. But if we're being honest with ourselves, it was not the people who gathered at the Lausa Secretariat or the people who gathered at the toll gate. They were not the ones who caused the mayhem. They were not the ones who caused all the civil unrest. We know the people. The police know the people. The miscreants, who caused all of those mayhem. But unfortunately, people who tend to go through peaceful protests are harassed almost all the time. And the Constitution says it. I'm sure, we had that on the news a few minutes ago. There's no way in the Constitution where it says you must seek permission from the police before you can go on protest. It's unfortunately, as much as we have laws in the country, it feels like, we're a banana republic. Anybody that doesn't toe the line of the government of the day is branded a criminal, is branded someone who doesn't love the state just because you have a difference of opinion. But, the show must go on. And for me, I think that there are so many questions yet to be answered. There's the issue of Pelumi Onifade, the young journalist who, was covering the protest somewhere on the mainland, and of course captured a politician in this state, allegedly shooting at protesters. He was arrested and he died in custody. 4 years after, we're yet to get
justice
conclusion on that issue. As we speak, his body has not been released. His family have not officially buried him. Let's not even talk about what happened at Lekki Tollgate. Let's not even talk about that. Let's not even go into what happened in Ogbomosho, in other parts of the... Let's not even talk about what happened in the Oyibo axis of Port Harcourt. So many things happened during that period that have been swept under the carpet. But you see, it can only hide for a certain period.
True.
One day, monkey will go market. Go come back.
Well, that's very correct, because actually, a lot of the activists, actually, one thing they were hamping on yesterday was that all of the judicial panel of inquiry that was raised up, to look into all of this, they came out with recommendation. And they say that those recommendations till date are not implemented. And I remember that some of these recommendations actually did not even focus on the people or what the people will receive, but also focus on the police officers themselves. I think one of the recommendations was about the increase in the welfare of the police, like police officers should even have better welfare, they should provide more for the police officers. But till date, all of those things are just where they are.
It's actually funny because, again, like you just noted, part of the reasons for that protest is the fact that young people recognize that even the police themselves, to a large extent, have not been dealt favorably by successive governments, not just the President Buhari governments before his time.
True.
And so part of their demands at the time was also for better welfare of police officers. But you see, unfortunately, we run a system where security personnel, are quote unquote in hands of the government of the day. See, there's so much to talk about. We'll just leave it at that, and hopefully, the new commissioner of police would go back on his words, because those words are illegal. That's just the truth. Nobody needs permission from the police to go on any procession or any protest. It's against the law. The law doesn't know that. But what can we do? Emmanuel, let's move on.
All right, we're moving on to what happened in Jigawa State last week, where we unfortunately lost the lives of over 150 people lost their lives, in an unfortunate accident that shouldn't have happened. The incident shouldn't have happened. It would have just been a tanker accident, and then that was the end. There was a spill, and that was the end. However, people came out in the numbers and, scooped fuel, from the fallen tanker, from the fellow petrol. So they were trying to scoop petrol. And, all of these things, Man, I don't even know. But it's very flammable. And the next thing that happened was a spark, and we had lives lost at that incident. Lives, properties, lost at that incident. It's not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not even the third time this is happening in Nigeria. Over and over again. We understand the current situation. We understand the cost of petrol at this very point in time, and we understand that people want to take advantage of things. But I think it was just it was just a worthless risk to say the least. What's your thoughts on that, Ufoma?
Emmanuel, just about 2 weeks ago or thereabout on the newsroom, we actually had a conversation, that more or less focused on how we treat tragedies. That we have sort of resorted in the media. By the way, it was more like a self-examination of those of us in the media.
True.
How we resorted to the part where we all we do actually is just report the numbers. 150 people died, 70 people were injured. So this was a conversation we're talking about just about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had what was it again that happened in Niger? Boat collapse or boat capsizing rather.
Yeah.
Where almost half of the passengers drowned and died.
Yeah.
And just before that, we had the issue in Borno State where, to a large extent, man-made issues, ensured that a dam collapsed. Even when there were warnings, even when officials of the state government had
gave assurance,
given assurances, and we ended up finding out that those assurances were not true.
Yeah.
But coming to last week's incident, it was not a shock because this is what happens almost everywhere in Nigeria, But I've taken my time more or less to go beyond the numbers. At least after the last count, we hear about 170 persons have died. So many, had severe injuries. It goes beyond the numbers. There's a case of Mustafa Abdullahi who lost 52 members of his family, according to him.
52 members.
52 members. That's what he told Al Jazeera. 52 members. That could include uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews. Imagine a situation where in your extended family you lose 52 persons. Think about it. Just take a moment and think about it. How do you cope? There's a case of I think Hassan, who worked in pharmacy, a clinic rather. He just bagged his diploma in pharmacy and he works there. He actually did not go to the venue to go and scoop petrol. His father told him to go warn his siblings and bring them back. His siblings were actually there scooping the petrol, but he got caught up. He lost his life. Right there. So he has 2 wives, has 8 kids. He lost his life. About 3 of his siblings also lost their lives there. Some were injured. It tells you how deep the issue is. For the person who lost 52 members of his family, extended family, how on earth do you think that person is going to cope for the rest of his life?
True.
But here's the underlying problem. The underlying problem is poverty.
Yeah.
The underlying problem. Because every human being, I would think, should know that petrol is flammable. When you go to petrol stations to buy petrol, it's written on the walls there that no smoking allowed.
Yeah, no cell phone.
That's because it's even cell phones. You're not even supposed to answer calls.
Yeah, around that area.
Because of the high radiation that could come from it could ensure that there's flame there. And once there's flame, boom, you know how disastrous it can be. But guess what? Some of us will still go to petrol stations and answer phone calls. In fact, the one that annoys me the most is when I see cab drivers or some motorists enter petrol stations and not even turn off the ignition of their cars. They're buying petrol and the car is actually on. I've seen it a few times. In fact, there was a cab I was in, and I literally screamed at the driver to say, "Okay, you won't kill me? I beg, I never ready to die, you know." But back to the conversation. It's poverty. Because if it's not poverty, tell me why in the middle of the night, 11 p.m., 12 p.m., you are out on the street, trying to scoop petrol from a tanker that had an accident. Even the driver of the tanker was actually warning some of the citizens of Magia in Jigawa, where this incident occurred, that they should move away, but they didn't listen. Because everybody at that point in time were thinking of, the money they're going to make, the free petrol they were going to get. The result, 170 people, including one man who lost 52 members of his family. It's a national tragedy. There's just no way to go about it.
Honestly, it's very, very sad. It makes me remember or reflect back then in 2019 when I covered a similar story in a Comcom community in Rivers State, where we had a pipeline explosion because people had actually gone there to also scoop. And the one of the things that took me a very long time, it traumatized me for a very long time, because I actually went inside of that swamp to actually try and see victims and people who were affected in it, and actually get the actual number of people who died in that very disaster. And one of the things that was very, that really got to me was an innocent palm wine tapper and his son who had actually gone to, find their daily bread on that very morning, and they were caught up in the flames and they perished there. Just hold on. So that image stayed in my head. It took years for that trauma to actually leave me. And these are all of the things. Most of the times when people take steps like this, it's not about you. It's not about you taking the risks. You have to look at other people who can be affected by your action. And I think that's where we'll leave that. Let's move on to the next story, where we talk about the national grid collapse. Of course, this one affects every one of us as Nigerians. Last week it was back to back. You are always hearing one phone call from your friend. Hello, how far? Is there light in your area? Is there power? Because the petrol is at over 1,000 naira. Some people even sell 1.5 right now here in Lagos, black market and all the likes. And you can't even turn on the gen for so long. So you have to literally rely on friends, who have power supply in their areas, or who have big generator, or they run on diesels. Literally everybody was calling everybody just to be able to cope. And this is something that has happened. It has never happened this frequent. What is really going on? What is really going on? Should we even expect more?
Possibly. It will happen again. Since President Buhari's administration, it's happened 105 times. 105 times since the last 9 years. It's happened 12 times already under President Tinubu. It's happened 3 times last week. Monday, Tuesday, Saturday morning when we were preparing to watch football. It happened again. Those of us who could manage to buy small petrol, we had to buy petrol to watch football because we needed to. Imagine the issues the risk it poses for business owners who have to have power. The barber on your street, the hairdresser, the man who has a small shop, they have to power their shops. And that comes at extra cost. That's why you go to the shop, and what you bought for 700 naira yesterday will now be going for 1,500 because they have to add all of these extra cost into the margin so that they'll be able to make that little profit. Not just even about profit, so that they'll even be able to have money to go back and buy the goods again from the wholesalers if it's a retail shop. So it's a tragedy. A serious tragedy. I do also know that over the last 1 year, the president has signed, that into law, removing the power sector from the exclusive list. So now states are able to generate power at least, or make investments in power. Unfortunately, that's not something that happens overnight. The one that we were celebrating a few months ago, was it last year in Abia State? That's a 20-year investment. It didn't happen overnight. So Nigerians would have to be patient. This morning while we were having the editorial meeting, Newsroom editorial meeting, part of what we discussed was we need to actually try and get a report and try and work out something. Let's see, because I do know that the Lagos State government, before now, at least under the Governor Bola Tinubu administration, his first 8 years as governor, I do know that he had some projects in terms of power, but that could not see the light of the day because of constitutional issues. Now that has come up, I would think that the governor of Lagos State, at least for the next 3 years, should be looking at continuing from where all the previous governors are. So hopefully, we in the newsroom here on Nigeria will try and reach out to the state government and find out where exactly we are, because we can't continue with this national grid collapsing. Or we could take the advice of the Minister of Power, who says maybe at least in the short term we could have regional grids, southwest, southeast, and all of that, so that everybody's not concentrating at the center. Maybe that can be like a temporary thing for us, because generating less than 5,000 megawatts for a population that we hear is about 200 million. It's not sustainable. Absolutely not sustainable
at all. And it goes to show that there is a lot to do with public funds. Okay, it shows that there's a whole lot of things we need to do with public funds. Now, before we go, because
we've had loans even from the World Bank. See, Manuel, let's move on. There's no much time.
There's no much time. There's a lot we need to do with money. Now, before we wrap up this segment of it and go to our next statement, let's just touch on the establishment of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu Federal University, that's scaled the first reading in the House of Reps. And we'll just oppose that with the Remi Tinubu golden statue. I think that was what I saw. I was like, where is that story here? Because that was one of the things that literally, got to me when I saw that report out there. There's a lot of things we need to do with money. And is this what we should be doing with money, especially at this time where a lot of Nigerians are going through a lot? Is it the conversation we should be having? Is it what the presidency government should be putting out there? It doesn't show empathy.
Let's in 2 minutes. I'll try and wrap this up. Let me start with the university. I think there's a little bit of misinformation. People did not actually get a lot of the information. I think maybe a slight issue I might have with that bill is the name. But hey, the people that sponsored the bill decided to name it after the president. My hands are up. I will have less issues with it, even though I have issues with it, but I can let that fly, because the truth of the matter is that we already have a National Institute for Nigerian Languages in Abia State. It's that school that they want to convert to a university, and I think it's a good idea, because it's going to expand the scope and the reach of that institute, which means we'll have more people, which means we'll have more development, which means the university can establish other campuses, maybe not in Aba, maybe in neighboring towns, or maybe in neighboring towns in Abia State. You know what that means. It brings more development to that region. So I think it's a good idea. Yes, I probably have an issue with renaming it after the president, because I'll ask myself, what exactly has he done in 1 year to deserve a school named after him? But that's story for another day. The one I really have an issue with is gold statue. In 2024, October 21st, when Nigerians are grappling with massive poverty, when Nigerians are having issues with buying petrol and all the effects that it actually has on the populace, the Oni of Ife believes that the best way to celebrate the First Lady. In fact, personally, I have my issues with the office of the First Lady, and I say that to you people in the newsroom every day. It's not a constitutional office, and I don't know why we give so much time and attention to it. But in an era where people are suffering, people can't even find food to eat, we decide that it's to erect a gold statue for the First Lady. That is our utmost priority. I think it's a shame. I think it's just the height of sycophancy that we experience in Nigeria. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so for the very first one about the university, I don't have any issues with it. But the only issue I have with it is that you see, you said more. They're going to improve it. Improve it means more money. We have lots of federal universities that have been working for years and that are lacking so many amenities. Redirect those funds here.
We don't have an institute of language.
We do. It's in Aba because the thing is that Ufuoma follow the money. Lagos, we'll take you right now. We take you right now to the segment brought to you by the Lagos State Government. This is where we call it the Newsroom Lagos, where we look at critical things that have happened for the past week in Lagos State. Now, you definitely caught the Lagos State Governor speaking to Lagosians and Nigerians about all of the works that's happening in Lagos State. He spoke on a whole lot of issues ranging from transportation in Lagos, talking about the blue rail line, the red rail line, the increment in minimum wage and the salary increase for workers, among other important things. Just a while ago, I was talking about the need for much more money in Lagos, the use of public funds. And this is the governor, addressing that. And one of the things he said that really got a lot of people very happy when they listened to that interview was actually his statement that the minimum wage in Lagos will be paid at 85,000 naira. It's not 70,000 naira that was agreed on by the federal government and the labor, but Lagos is going to be paying 85,000 naira, 15% more not 15%, sorry, 15,000 naira more additional, as you may have it.
I'm glad to let you know that minimum wage for Lagos, which we've conversed and discussed with our union, right, is 85,000 naira today now. So, I mean, it's not a competition. So I'm not going to say that we're paying more than some other people. It's a function of affordability and it's a function of capacity. But we know too well that when people live in Lagos, Lagos has a premium in terms of even the cost, of living. And so we are fully aware. We actually increased, our salary earlier in the year, and deserving so for our staff, and we'll continue to do that. I would want to come back to you in January and say to you that I've been able to increase the minimum wage of Lagos to 100,000, not because I want to make anybody look bad. It's really because I want my people to have a living wage. I want them to truly, really be able to know that their government is working for them. We'll tight up places where we don't need, those kind of expenses, and be able to give them, commensurate things that will take them home, not drop them at the bus stop from the station, take them really home. So that's the kind of plan that we have, for them. And you also know that right now we're also doing differentiated timing, for our civil servant and our public workers in Lagos State. Almost in every urban cities in the world.
All right. So if you're in Lagos, that was the voice of the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, talking about and addressing the Lagos minimum wage. And of course, if you're in Lagos, you know that it is a premium. If you're living here in Lagos, you know that everything is on an increase. And that is one of the things that the governor is doing to ensure that people are able to live, and able to come out of poverty, so to speak. But another issue that concerns every one of us here in Lagos is the issue of transportation. And one of the things that affect a lot of people is moving from the island to the mainland, especially when you are living in places like Yanopaja, and your work where you live is where you work rather is at Aja or that access. And this brings about the conversation about the Fourth Mainland Bridge and also the second airport that we're talking about, international airport that we're talking about. And the governor addressed some of these things, and he addressed the challenges slowing down the work. He says his administration is looking for other ways to take this project forward, because all we know, every one of us know that this is what is going to help Lagos State. It's going to literally put Lagos State on the map. But where is the Lagos State government on this?
What have we done? We've baked those transactions to make them attractive We've designed those models to make them investor attractive, and we've done everything regarding the fourth mainland bridge. And I also need to also thank, Mr. President, especially an alternative on the Lagos-Calabar Highway, which will run parallel, from Amadu, will run parallel on the Atlantic Ocean towards the free trade zone. So we have the Lekki-Epe Expressway, which is in the middle, right? The plan is for us to have what we call a lagoon highway on the farthest parts, of the Lekki Peninsula, which will also run towards Epe. So the fourth mainland bridge is supposed to be from Aja and just cross to Ibeshe in Ikorodu. And we've done extensive work. The alignment, everything has been concluded, the hydrographic study, the viability study, the feasibility studies, everything. We know what the buckets of the numbers are. So we've had concessionaires who we've sat with. Unfortunately, I must say this, also in the air, the kind of request that they're asking of us, we cannot grant it. They're asking for a sovereign guarantee. I'm a subnational, I'm not a sovereign, so it's a difficult call. I cannot just walk to Honorable Minister of Finance and say, give me a sovereign guarantee. It doesn't work like that. It has to be negotiated. It has to be something that they also need to carry in their bucket. So it's a fairly long, conversation for you to get to that. So we're looking for other means, of agreeing, on how to take that forward. With the airport, that's a more fairly straightforward, investment decision. So we want to have our skin in the game. We're planning to also be able to raise investment, but we need to also work with the federal government. So we have meetings planned out with FAN, with NCAA, with the Federal Minister of Aviation. We have approval, they've given to us, but it's more than approval. There are some basal rules, there's some engagement that needs to take place. We know that it's viable, we know that it's needed in that part of the city, given the development that is happening there, given the investment that I've seen even coming there. But it's not just about us, it's about a full conversation with our regulators, with our federal government, and ensure that even investors feel comfortable, that they have all the regulatory approvals before we move on. So we've gone around, we've done a bit of a roadshow, we've done a bit of engagement to be able to attract, FDIs so that they'll see the viability.
Yes, to see the viability of the projects, and I do hope that investors actually see the viability of them, because they are needed to be able to get these projects off the ground. But then when we look at other issues that are still affecting Lagosians aside all of these projects, one of the issues affecting Lagosians is actually the increment in the price of boarding schools for model secondary schools in the state. Now that's affecting a lot of people, especially because of the economic state of the nation. But the governor has justified the increase, that very increase, and this is what he had to say. Literally, I don't have to say it. You have to hear from him personally.
Because it has nothing to do with the infrastructure. We rebuilt the hostels, we fixed all the beddings, we put nets there. We do everything to make sure that every time they go back and they come in, the place is ready to receive them again. Right. So if we are now taking that burden, we have helped you to ensure that the responsibility from 2 o'clock to the next day they're supposed to take for your people is on the responsibility of the house masters and house mistresses. And we're saying this is just for them. Let's do the numbers. It's just to feed them. It's just to ensure that at least they are not coming back home with kwashoko. They're not looking, less elder than you left there with us. We're not asking you for any other thing. We provide security, we provide lights, we provide, beddings, we provide every other thing for them. We've built more schools in the last 5 years than in the previous 10 years. It's not anything. As I'm speaking to you today, I have about 15 schools to commission. 15 that have all been completed just to hand over, and just to give to the people. So really for us, it's about improving the physical infrastructure and the training and learning environment of these pupils. And that's our primary hope. That's our primary aim. Yeah. You can see the pictures of some of those schools. So we're giving them top-notch infrastructure.
Of course, top-notch infrastructure that we cannot contest, and also we cannot also contest the fact that the price of food items in the market has actually gone up. So if you just oppose that with what the governor is saying, I think it will give you a very it will give you a better understanding of where the state government is coming up when it comes to the increment. The governor spoke on a whole lot of other issues. We unfortunately cannot take every one of them, but one of them is also about the rite of passage, and speaking about the plans to evacuate people from unsafe zone across the state, meaning when we talk about collapse and other of the issues, he addressed that as well. But we'll get all of this conversation going on the very next episode of this show. Lagos, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for joining the newsroom today. My name is Manuel Onka. A big thank you to my producer, Precious Nena Okon, and Ufuoma Egbamuno, who joined me on the show today. We'll be back here again next week, Monday, and we'll make sure to bring you much more of what's happening across the country and in Lagos.
More conversation, more talk, more right after this.
My ions, please, can't get enough. My ions, please, give it to me.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's